Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Rich. Welcome to the Green Arrow FPL podcast from Fantasy Football Hub as we look ahead to Game Week 36 as an eventful double Game Week 35 reaches its conclusion this evening. My name is Fergi, and I'm here with the brilliant Rich Clarke as usual. Rich, how are you? And what colour is your arrow so far in double Game Week 35?
Morning, Fergie. Morning.
Morning,
Fergie. Evening.
Morning, Rich.
Evening, everyone. Interesting week so far. I think I've a tiny green, but it feels like it's all on tonight's game as to whether or not that consolidates into a big green or not. Still hopeful.
You got Ben Davis to score you some points.
Ben Davis is one of my casualties, unfortunately, but he was a differential and got himself an assist through getting kicked in the balls. So that was an interesting way to get an assist. And I've got the wild card. It's a fairly templatey looking wild card from a front eight perspective, but I was sitting about half an hour before the deadline mulling over whether or not to keep Harry Maguire, who's been in my team pretty much all season, and he was coming in on a lot of wild cards. So I decided at the very last minute that I'd have a punt on a sixth Chelsea and Spurs player, and went for Ben Davis because he was something like 0.4% owned across the game, and I thought all his points will be gain points for me. And I was feeling quite comfortable with it, actually. I knew he'd have a tough time against Saka in the derby, but still had 3 games to go. And then
you didn't buy him
yesterday,
for that game, did you?
No, I didn't. I bought him for next week and bought him for tonight. And he's now got a calf injury, so he won't be playing any more part this season. So we can add him to the deluge of flags that has struck most people's defences across the game. I think most people's sort of front lines look fairly healthy at the moment, but everybody's problems seem to be across the keepers and the defenders. So I'm sure we'll get into that in more detail. But looking forward to the game tonight. I'm a Chelsea fan with a lot of Spurs mates, including yourself. So it's not normally a dull game, is it?
Absolutely not. It's going to be chaos because both teams, let's be honest, are absolutely bloody dreadful. Hopefully it won't be like the last time they met, which completely derailed Spurs' season. Interesting you said about, you've got Nicholas Jackson up front, and you said, I've got a perfectly healthy front line. He's healthy as in he's well, but I wouldn't call him healthy yet, as in, he's a good solid pick up front with another bang average 2 points on the weekend.
Yeah.
I do fancy him, actually, though. I think he scores this evening. I really do. Spurs are just so bad at the back, and I'm assuming Emerson Royale is now going to come in for Ben Davis at left back, which is going to make the defense even wobblier than it already is.
I think he did finish a good chance, didn't he? He was only caught marginally offside, but he put it away nicely. I mean, he can, he is a bit of a Chelsea's Darwin Núñez, isn't he? He can't finish his dinner, but he scored 10 goals, he's got some assists, and this is a sort of open game where I think he'll get chances. So I'm optimistic for Mr. Jackson.
FPL Freddie's right. I clean forgot. He scored a hat-trick last time against Spurs, didn't he? Where he had all those breakaway chances, wasn't it? He did. They were just Spurs are camped on the halfway line.
Absolutely. So definitely reasons to be cheerful. We've got to decide in a minute, haven't we? We've got to drag the spaffometer out.
I've dusted it off, mate.
Is applicable? What rating to give it? We'll let the chat decide whether it's a spaff or a meh. Certainly can't even possibly suggest I've smashed it yet, but we'll have to see what happens on how the wild card is doing the bench boost in game week 37 to judge whether or not it was a success.
I'm not sure about that, mate. I would say this weekend is the judge personally, because if Watkins, Salah and Saka, just to name 3 right off the top of my head, who were in everyone's team, if they bang this weekend, I think it has to be a spaff, and that's because unless Nicholas Jackson scores like 5 goals this evening, or Porro gets a 15-pointer or something, which obviously have to be exclusive of each other. I think if you even out over the 2 weeks, and bear in mind every other bugger's injured for the bench boost anyway, you'll be having to take hits for that anyway, or wherever it is. I think this weekend, mate. But it'd be interesting to see in the chat if you do want to give it a rating at the moment. Please do. For those who haven't seen it before, spaff means it hasn't been the best. It's been pretty dire. Not good. Mary's, it's all right. It's kind of done a job. Smashed would be like, whoever free hit in game week 34 and scored 130
Definitely
points.
smashed
That's a
the free
smash,
hit, yeah.
as an example of a smash. So let us know what you think. We've had one rating so far of 590.74, and he has said spaff. But we will see. We will see how it goes.
We'll see. Well, we've had the Newcastle points. So obviously that part of it's gone very well, unless you owned Fabian's share. Still got them obviously for their double next week. So that's really the upside of the wild card. But most wild cards this season, including your own, Fergie, have been a bit of a disaster straight off the bat, haven't they? They haven't immediately repaid or gained their owners any points. They've actually dropped back most weeks.
There's been no natural I don't think there's been a massively natural time to play that. I saw some things on social media last week was interesting about potentially not using the wildcard in 35, but actually saving it for 36, because a lot of the good 35 options, 36 options had good fixing 35 anyway. But well, we can have a look at the shape now. Look at the state on my team of what happens if you didn't wildcard, because I didn't take any hits to bring in Isaac and Gordon, which, as you can imagine, each one of those returns was like a dagger to the heart, because I knew, how large they were going to be. I just couldn't bring myself, rightly or wrongly, to take out Solanke or Mateta, who've both been on reasonable form, especially Mateta, obviously. I couldn't bring myself to take a hit to bring in Isaac and Gordon. Bear in mind, Isaac and Gordon have been absolutely sensational at home, but they haven't been good away, and 3 of the next 4 are away as well. So yeah, I stuck with Mateta and Solanke anyway, who both blanked. Thankfully, I stuck with Saka, which was good. I got Foden. Who did I get? I got Mateta off the bench for Foden, and I had Senesi. Look at Senesi there, mate. 13 points.
Sitting on my bench.
And it was, if Haaland hadn't have come on, I would have had Senesi's point, which is probably have evened me out to get a greyish arrow. So, and obviously I've only got Palmer, Son, and Vicario this evening. So hoping Jackson stays. If Jackson bangs a couple in tonight, which I expect him to score one, my rank, I'm going to be outside the top 500k, mate. But I don't want to go on. I do not want to go on and on whinging, because we had some feedback last week or the week before that we were a bit down in the dumps. So
no, we're not down. It's just very difficult to gain. The template midfield has sort of set itself up. The wild card picked itself. So unless you are going to go for like your Ben Davis type picks and your really low owned differentials, the season looks like it's just going to finish on rails. Your only way to gain
got this to look forward to
is to differentiate the captain a little bit, and maybe just go a bit different with your remaining transfers, because no one's going to sell that midfield.
Well, if we're taking like we spoke briefly before we came on here about kind of next week, right? And wildcarders and non-wildcarders who've still got their bench boost left will all be taking hits ahead of 37 due to the injury. We're going to obviously touch on the injuries now, and kind of what to do. But you may as well, if you're taking hits anyway, you may as well take hits and go for different players from the norm, because why not? What is taking a -8 or -12 to get the same plays than everyone else going to actually do for you? Absolutely nothing. You may as well go.
Well, unless you are happy with your rank, unless you are
of course
winning your mini league, or unless you're in the top 50k and you want to consolidate. Then then you go with the high ownership common picks. If you want to gain and you want to make up ground, you really, there's not much point buying a template player.
Absolutely.
You need to get someone different.
Just a quick hello in the chat before we move on. FPL Yerbs is in. Anup is in. Sokan says, I got more red flags in my team than my date last weekend. Doesn't sound like the date went very well, Sokan. Hope it did. I'm 1974, so we need a poll. Son, Palmer, or other captain pick tonight. Let us know in the chat who you've got captains this evening. I think Palmer's probably the highest owned, but let us know in the chat who you are rooting for tonight. Ross McAlpine is in. Johnny A says, well, finally made it to a live one. Great to have you, Johnny. James Thompson, even though interested in Fergie's punt, I reckon Richarlison is back on the menu. You may be right there, James. Matt Stevens is in. Says about Bruno. For those who haven't heard, our thumbnail star Bruno Fernandes is in the last few hours being told he's a doubt for the match on Monday evening. So that's kind of ruined a slide or two coming up. Spoiler alert. FPL Freddy, FPL Copycat is in as well. Matt Orell, Dan Megan, Craig Hunter, John David, Rodian, Harry Dawson, I'm 74, Natasha, Nick Moore. Says, if you're complaining about FPL managers being a bit pessimistic, you're playing the wrong game. Absolutely. Russell's in, and FPL Freddy said, Fergie, who is going to win the snooker? What a great question. It's great to see all the other names in. I'll be rooting for fellow Welshman Jack Jones, who only lives down the road from me, obviously, though I'd have drawn Bingham in the sweep. So either way, I'm a winner there, which is nice. Anyway, enough of the snooker. Let's move on, Rich, and just have a look at the final few games of the season. Brighton top the fixture ticker. Home to Villa, away to Newcastle, home to Chelsea, home to United. So even though Brighton have been in pretty dire form, they have got 3 home games in the next 4, and they are against 4 potentially, I would say, leaky teams. All those 4 teams at the moment have been conceding quite a few goals. Man City, and next, obviously, got the Dublin 37. They've got home games either side, which is nice for them. Really nice fixtures. Looks like Haaland is back as well. Chelsea have got decent fixtures. Home to West Ham, home to Bournemouth. Not the best defensively, maybe. Forest and Brighton. And then, obviously, Spurs, who finish off really nicely with Burnley at home, Sheffield United away as well in the final few. But what's your take, Rich? What's your
I mean, this was
thinking?
If you, I know that we got some feedback. One or two said, don't make the show just about wildcarders, and that's fair enough. But there were a massive swathe of wildcarders last week across the game. But there's going to be an even more massive swathe of bench boosters next week. I think something like 80% of the game still has their bench boost left, and really next week is the logical week to play it. So it's all about getting your team ready for the bench boost. And if you look at that fixture bracket there, the first half dozen teams in that bracket there all double next week. And so if you haven't got them all in on your wild card last week for those 6 teams, you'll be now shopping with free transfers and hits, going into the bench boost week, and with one eye on game week 38 as well. So the common theme will be to try and take 2 free transfers into game week 38, so you can have the luxury of a couple of free swings that week. That's the sort of the most recommended way to play. But I honestly don't think that many teams or that many managers will have that luxury because of the number of flag players that we've already got. Even wildcarders have got 2 or 3 flag players now. So it's going to be very difficult to get to 38 having 2 frees. However, I'm going to try and do that. I'll try and get there. And but the imperative really has to be get yourself 15 players who have a good chance of starting. They don't all have to double, but you've got to, if you're going to bench boost, you can't really have a player who's out, because it just takes away 25% of the bench boost. Another player who doesn't make it on the day reduces your bench boost by 50% just because of the substitution rule. So you must try and get your teams healthy, and you should be looking at those teams up the top. So Brighton, I'm surprised they top the ticker on fixtures. The fixtures are rated highly, obviously, for attack. But no one's really looking at them. There were a few teams last week with Van Hecker in them because he was 4.1 million, and he at least had the decency to get injured before he started the game, and ruled out for the rest of the season. So most people have probably got looking at Van Hecker if they own anybody, and the only other person really worth a mention is probably João Pedro as a cheap striker.
Yeah, he started the last 2. The only other player we've been looking at, he's actually been. I only saw him because of ABI, but Barco, the left back, has started the last 2.
He started appearing, has he?
Because Estepinen is out for the season. So that Barco has just come from I don't know if it's Barco or Barso. I think it's Barco. He started the last two and played 90 minutes in both. But he is only on one FPL point for the season because they've lost, I think, 5-0 and 4-0 in the last two games or whatever it is. So, but if
they don't seem that attractive, do they? Unless you're using one as an enabler, to get to a KDB or something like that. If you're trying to stretch some funds and can get a doubler in order to get a high ceiling player, then it may work for you. But I'm not really looking at Brighton. Maybe Lewis Dunk, he's a bit of a stalwart of old and he can pop up with a goal every now and again. But I don't have any Brighton players, and hopefully I don't intend to get any either. City look good. Obviously, many of us are stuck with the Edison situation. We'll get onto that in a minute. And Gvardiol obviously came in with a nice 15-pointer for those who punted on him last week. And I'm sure there's a few in the chat there that are very happy as a result. So Gvardiol looks like a good option if you are fixing a defensive flag this week. Chelsea, let's see how tonight goes. It could be a disaster. I'm not expecting defensive points for Chelsea.
I go for 3-3.
Wise, they look pretty good. I say a high scoring draw would be my estimate. Anything between 2-2 and 4-4, I agree with you. Yeah. Not going to be many defensive points around tonight unless Porro gets something in attack. Spurs. Interested in your thoughts on Spurs. I thought they were much better second half against Arsenal. It was a tough game. Again, the usual sort of fiery derby, but they seem a bit down. And there is this opinion starting to circulate, isn't it, that they might, not try quite so hard against City next week in the double game week. I don't know what your view on that is, but interested to hear that from a Tottenham fan.
That would never happen, anyway. But there's no way Postecoglou would allow that to happen at all. So there's no.
You think it's a load of rubbish?
It is a load of rubbish. Okay. I just think with at the moment, don't we know kind of what you're going to get? They seem to they seem to be getting away with conceding lots of goals by scoring more goals, but they just can't seem to find back at them. I think Richarlison back, hopefully back and maybe starting will change the dynamic a bit potentially, because they have been relying on, I wouldn't say second string players, but probably not their first choice attacking three, and they've been trying them in different positions. Kulusevski, Werner, Johnson, they've been kind of interchanging and playing, and Maddison hasn't quite found his the form that he had. Son is, as much as I love him as a player and as a person, he's not really a number 9, is he either? So they all seem to be kind of round pegs in square hole at the moment. It's not really happening. So, and they always concede. So I've got Vicario. I think the best I can hope for is like a penalty save. In all honesty, which but that's what it's come down to, Rich. So
that really would be that would be the sort of swing people are looking for, isn't it? If people are on Palmer captaincy tonight and he saves it, then that would be.
I'm on Palmer captain. Swings. I still want the. But I would say with Spurs away to Liverpool, you're not really sure what you're going to get with Liverpool either, because they're all over the shop at the moment. Spurs have got an excellent record against Man City, though I wouldn't take that too much into account because Man City are just in champions mode at the moment. So I kind of expect like a 1-0 since the FA Cup maybe. But they are home to Burnley and they are with Sheffield United. So I think both those teams will. I think all 4 teams will score against Spurs. It's just whether they can turn it on a bit up the pitch and just get back to scoring the 2 or 3 goals that they were a few weeks back. So
interesting. Yeah, and then coming down that list a bit, you've got Newcastle and Man United who play each other during the double game week. Again, United have 2 home games, but they are against Arsenal and Newcastle, 2 of the highest scoring teams in the division. Yeah. So I'm not seeing any clean sheets for United. Perhaps a few save points for Onana across the 2 games. But Newcastle, Kieran Trippier could be an option, could be coming back. He almost made the slide. I'm not sure whether he did or not. I can't remember if he's on there, but he might be able to take someone's place on the slide. So certainly, if you haven't tripled on Newcastle, they probably look still worth doing that for. Got Burnley this week. Could be a tough fixture, but I like them in the double and a nice home game against Brighton as well. I think in the double, so nice one there. United, obviously the big news is Bruno. He seems to be on great form. I think he created 12 chances or 9 chances. Anyway, scored bonus points without actually getting an attack in return. Had he got an attack in return, he'd have hauled. So Bruno's still a good bet if he's fit. But he's probably a hold on buying him now.
I was going to say you wouldn't bring him in this week now, would you? Because he's not.
No, you wouldn't now.
The fixture's not. Is not the best either, is it? Because Palace are playing well at the moment, so.
Exactly. So now that's if you were planning to buy Bruno, I'd hold off and just play your Saka or your Salah or whoever it is you're taking out for him, and ride it a week.
So we've got a few players now who would have been incredibly popular on Wildcard in popular transfers. I've got 2 in my team. I know some have got as many as 3, 4, even 5. But Fabian Schär, Malo Gusto, Ederson. We're not quite sure on Ederson. Apparently he may be back, so it's probably worth holding on to him. Aït-Nouri played 85 minutes and then went off again injured, and Van Heck has been confirmed out for the season. So these players are particularly popular amongst engaged managers, wildcarders. What's your thoughts, Rich, on kind of what to do with them? Because it's it could tend to be a bit of a nightmare, especially we're bench boosting next week and they're all bloody injured.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, if you can roll this week and get 11 out, roll.
Is that your overarching strategy?
I think the Masters, unless you are, you've got 4 or 5 flag defenders and you need to start taking them out. You might think, well, I'll take a hit this week and a hit next week and make 4 transfers. Then that's fine. I'm not saying sit on 4 flag defenders, but if you are wild carding and you've got Ederson and Petrovic, for instance, I will just pay Petrovic at home to West Ham, and I'll see if I'll possibly start Ederson and just see if he recovers. But then you've got your reserve keeper to come in if he's out, and then wait and see if he's back, because you might be able to use your transfer in game week 37 on someone else, on to put out another flag. In my case, Ben Davies. So definitely roll on some of these guys. Fabian Schär's not necessarily out. He was taken off at half-time as a precaution, and he could well come back. I doubt how Eddie Howe will give you an affirmative either way, but if you just wait till game week 37, again, you may have him back. Gusto's a bit more pessimistic, isn't it? He's not really showing any signs of being back for the West Ham fixture, despite I think there was a video last week of him saying that he was targeting that match. He's still red flag, so he might be one that you can look to move on this week. And then you own Aït-Nouri, don't you? So what's your thoughts on him? You're going to keep, because they're playing City this week, so you'd bench him anyway, right? So
I think I can get 11 out this week. So the only way I'm going to try and save a transfer, but if my bench is threadbare and there is a risky player there, I'm just going to make the move, because the last thing I want to do, I'm going to make a move anyway next week for a doubler, and there's no point in hanging on and kind of saving a transfer. I'm going to lose out on points this week, so I haven't given it a lot of thought yet. We'll have a look in a bit. I'll have a look at the recommendations for my transfers, but I think I can get 11 out. So if someone is out, your Ben Davies, for example, I appreciate with you your team's slightly different in that you've definitely got 11 out anyway. But for those who are on the cusp of 11, 10, maybe 11 because of an unsure, say like Schär. So if you're not sure on Schär, it's worth selling Aït-Nouri then, I think, because you're going to sell him anyway. And if Schär doesn't make it, you're down to 10. It doesn't make sense. So.
Yeah, I think I'd give yourself at least a guarantee of 11 stars. I mean, exactly, definitely, but Van Eke, again, I think you could probably sell him because the prognosis is out for the season. So he's dead, isn't he? So,
exactly, yeah.
So it's just have you got the money for an upgrade? In which case, how far can you stretch from?
Go to Ben Davies. Oh no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
This is why Barco has come up in Hub AI, because he's the only player of that price bracket who has been playing recently and has got potentially any chance of like a double, I think, which is why he's come up. I'm not saying to go for him. One, because Brighton defensively have been woeful recently, and 2, he has played 90 the last 2, but he could potentially lose his place. We don't know, but he looks to be the only one in that bracket who has a chance of playing the double. But Looking at the best transfers in, we've got Bruno right smack bang in the centre, but obviously produced this slide before we had the thing.
It's about 10:59, wasn't it, when the presser was at 11?
Like that. But there are a few other players, Rich. A few of them obvious, a few maybe less so. But yeah, in terms of transfers in this week, if you are making a transfer, who would you be targeting?
I think if you haven't got a Newcastle defender, I mean, Dan Burns in the corner there, he's 4.6 mil. You know, given the lack of options, is if he doesn't get injured, he's going to play the rest of the games, right? Yeah. So he has Burnley away, then Brighton at home, and who are they away to?
Gone off the
Man United. So he's good. If you've got loads of money in the bank, you might want to wait this weekend and see if Trippier comes back. If you're flush with cash, Trippier at 6.6, he's been out in Dubai doing some warm weather recovery work, targeting the last 3 games of the season, which in Newcastle's case is game week 37. Yeah. So he nearly made the slide, but because he's actually in Dubai at the moment, I doubt very much he'll start the Burnley fixture. He'll probably be targeting a return in game week 37. The form man at the moment is Kai Havertz. You know, he continues to. He's not that well fancied still. People still want to have the safety of Saka in their teams, and perhaps even Odegaard has been more transferred in recently than Havertz. But Havertz continues to provide returns. I think I read somewhere that he's the highest scoring player in the game since game week 24. Is it something like that? Yeah. So, in terms of having a punt either this week for Bournemouth and then in the last week at home to Everton, you're getting 2 prime home games for 7.4, but he doesn't double. So that's why he'll be a bit of a differential for whoever brings him in, because he doesn't double. And so therefore all the people, the herd will buy doubling players from this point on. So really like the Havertz pick. May go for him on the last day, or even be forced to go for him on the last day if I've only got 1 free transfer and not enough funds to get to a Saka. Saka's considerably more expensive. I think Havertz is 7.4, is it? Maybe he's gone up a bit, but he's certainly under 8. So yeah, and then on the other side of this quintet, we've got the 2 City differentials, if you like. Many won't be able to get to KDB easily without a couple of transfers or without you losing an existing doubler. But De Bruyne, I think if he can repeat his achievements on my birthday from 2 years ago, he'll make a lot of people happy. So in game week 36 on the 11th of May, 2 seasons ago, Kevin De Bruyne scored 30 points in 1 game against Wolves.
I remember
scored 4 goals. And I'd been out of the theatre, came in and I'd captained him, and it got me 60 points and completely, U-turned my season. I think 1 or 2 people had triple captained him and got 90 points. So that he's the sort of player that has that high ceiling, that if you want to bring someone in as a late season differential, he's a great shout. I mean, quite a few people still own Salah. So Salah to KDB is an easy move. That'd be a really nice transfer. And then obviously last week's hero, Gvardiol. I mean, what's your view? Do you think he'll get all remaining games? Or would you rather go for the minutes safety of, say, Kyle Walker or something if you're bringing in a City defender?
Diaz. The safety of Diaz. I don't know. You just don't know, do you? I would.
Just don't know.
I would. No. If I was to hazard a guess, if I had like a gun to my head, I think he probably starts a minimum, probably 3 of the last 4, which I think is enough, enough time to invest in him. He's looking, obviously City are in kind of champions mode at the moment, so they're keeping nice and tight. He's having the attacking return as well. I think he's a decent buy. I do. I think he's probably the best defensive buy around at the moment.
Yeah,
I would say.
But
it's impossible to say if you think he plays, because you just you have no idea really.
I think popular combinations we're talking about transfers in is might be, for me, will be roll this week, give Ederson a chance to become more certain for the double game week. If there is still uncertainty there about Ederson, then I could do something like Ederson to Onana and Davies to Gvardiol, and just swap it around in terms of the City defender. Get get the Gvardiol defender in, and also get another doubler in Anana for game week 37, and then that way I've got fairly nailed starters with double game weeks for free, and then I've only got one transfer in the last week, but it's a nice combination transfer that I'm looking at. I think Bruno will be okay. I'm not saying buy him now because of the doubt, but I think if you've got him, you definitely hold him.
100%.
He's like Saka. He's made every game, that there has been. He was even pictured in that ski boot, wasn't it, last season?
And he played.
And he played.
Played like 3 days later.
Did an Anthony Gordon. So I mean, I don't think he's not going to not make that Palace game. But I'd take him out of this slide now if I was redoing it.
We've got Gvardiol as an average of 79 minutes for the last 4 games, which I think is probably about fair. As I say, that's kind of just over three of the 4 games, and he's top. He's predicted top of all defenders from now for the rest of the season, along with a few of the other Man City defenders as well, Ake, Walker, and Akanji. But you just never know who comes in those spots. A tough one. Just have a quick look at predicted points the rest of the season. Top 3 are dominated by Man City. Haaland 32 points, Foden 25, De Bruyne 24, quite tight between Foden and De Bruyne. Isaac, who I still don't own to my detriment, had 24 points. Son 23, Palmer 23, Bruno. This doesn't obviously account for any kind of injury news. 21. Salah still 20. I think we've got him averaged at 77 minutes for the rest of the season. The remaining 3 games. Jackson is still up there just because of his minutes. He plays 90 nearly every week, and the fixtures are pretty decent. Gordon, Garnacho, Alvarez. His minutes have improved recently, hence why he's in the team. He's taken minutes off De Bruyne, Foden, and Haaland recently, so he's kind of in there. But we go for him personally. Brennan Johnson, who we mentioned last week, 19 points, and then a few others there as well. Gvardiol, as I mentioned, is the highest predicted points for defenders for the rest of the season. I don't think there's any real surprise in there. A couple of low-owned players, but I suppose so. We wanted to ask Rich just around. I suppose we're nearing the end of the season now. There's kind of mini leagues to be won and lost. There's also overall rank to consider. Some people, us aside, are having fantastic seasons. They're closing their best ever finish, and things as well. Have you got any tips or anything for how to close out a season? Firstly, I suppose for those who are doing really well, who are top of their mini leagues, or they're in the top 10k or 50k, and they're really happy. What would your tips be for them to close the season?
I think, don't try and be too clever in the last few weeks. If you're happy with your position and you're not literally trying to come first in FPL, then you want to consolidate. You want to captain the highest captain choice for the remainder of the season, because ownership percentages become very important to outcomes for you, for the people around you in your rank tier. If everybody in your rank tier is going for Haaland, then go with Haaland. If everyone is, if there's a player that you don't own in your side that's looking really dangerous, like an Isak, and you need to cover that off with the transfer, then cover it off with the transfer before the double game week, so that you cover those potentials for high variance to go against you, because it's high variance going against you that will cause your rank to drop. If you can cover as much of that off with your template side, and it will look very template, then you'll just finish on rails along with everybody else, and you shouldn't drop too far if you just make a bench mistake, or if everyone's captaining the majority pick. If it's the opposite is true, if you're looking to gain, don't spend your transfer getting the most popular transfer pick that week just because it makes logical sense. You look at a low ownership pick. So for instance, in the last week, you might have to pick between buying Saka and Havertz. Yes, over a season, Saka is probably the better pick, for 9 mil. But actually, Havertz is probably the better pick if you are going to say that in one game Havertz has got just as much chance, if not more, because of his form on scoring more. And I've got a guy to catch who's 14 points ahead of me in a mini league. Go for Havertz if you're trying to catch him, especially
Absolutely.
if your opponent owns Saka, because you've just got to make your team different to your opponent and give yourself a chance to catch. And you'll only do that by having players that your opponent doesn't own.
You just got to think, haven't you? If you pick Saka in that instance, you almost don't want him to do anything because it doesn't. It's of no relevance. At least if you go for Havertz, all right. If Saka bangs, you would have lost anyway. But if the odd chance that Havertz does have a good game,
or to compound that, if you're looking at, and I do advise, if you're in a mini league, look at the makeup of your rivals' teams. If there are several of them, look at how many of them own, say, a Saka versus a Havertz, and try and bring in a player for the last week that no one owns or very few of them own. And then if none of them follow and do the same as you, stick the armband on the player that you uniquely own, and then definitely. You double your gains. And yes, it might not come off, but it's time for Hail Mary picks, isn't it? You're trying to.
As long as you're aware of the risk that you could fly down, but if you're willing to take that risk to fly up, then yeah, absolutely. I think just another thing I'd add at this point of the season, we were looking at kind of some of the Hub AI stuff this morning and looking at a few of the numbers and things and game state and game importance. So not to about FPL, more about kind of football in general now is something we were looking at the Brighton and Villa game, and on paper, I don't know, a couple of months ago, even a few weeks ago, Brighton versus Villa, you would look at and think, oh, that'll be a really, really good game. Both teams were playing sort of reasonably well. Villa were playing well. They had a bit of a dip. Now they're playing well again. And Brighton have, well, it feels like they're sort of on the beach and they're kind of experimenting a touch with different sorts of players. But if you look at that in terms of game importance, Brighton have nothing to play for whatsoever. They've just been hammered. What is it? 5? I'm sure it's like 5-0 and 4-0 or 4-0 and 4-0. And Villa have got everything to play for in terms of the kind of sentiment of both teams at the moment. As I say, Brighton feel like they're just seeing the season out, experimenting the turns. They've got some injuries. They've got a very sort of unreliable team. They still can't decide who their number one keeper is either. No,
Bergen is going to continue to rotate.
This is it. So. Whereas Villa have got everything to play for, got a settled team. They're still doing well in Europe, but they're going to chase down this fourth place for all it's worth. So. Whereas, like on paper, a few weeks ago, this may have looked like a tight affair. I thoroughly expect, rightly or wrongly, quite happy to be proved wrong, but I expect Villa to do a job on Brighton and win quite comfortably, like 2-0 or something, which is not something we'd have said a while ago. So the game state of teams who are chasing things and those aren't, and you can see Arsenal's tails are just right up at the moment, aren't they? Whereas Liverpool's are kind of
they've dropped away. They've done what Arsenal did last season.
They have, yeah.
And when a team gets deflated like that, it's very, very hard to pick themselves up again. Which is why I think there's a bit of a benching headache for a lot of people this week. And I think I'm still going to play Son at Liverpool. I think
exactly. That's a really good example
because Liverpool's their heads have dropped and they've Salah's not getting starts and there's a few ructions on Klopp's way out. It's not looking good for back in Liverpool right now. Whereas teams like Villa got stuff to go for. Even teams Newcastle have still got an outside chance of making a Europa spot or a conference spot, so they're probably going to be pretty motivated to carry on playing well. It does come into it. Whereas you want to bring in a player, certainly for the last week of the season, who's got something to play for, even if it's relegation. I think I've seen some shouts for Chris Wood. I think even though he had an appalling game last week, missed a couple of absolute sitters against City. I think Forest played Burnley on the last day of the season. I mean, that's a relegation that could send the loser down. The way it's panning out. So again, you've got options to pick players for games who've got something to play for and are going to be motivated. So yeah, that's definitely a tactic.
And Man United defensively are just absolutely farcical. I own Mateta. I haven't really thought about it, but I'm quite excited about owning Mateta.
I think that's good.
Palace home to United. I reckon Mateta definitely gets at least one attack in return in that match. There's no way in the world United are keeping him out. So yeah,
keep him. You could have another 29 points.
That'd be nice. Could I captain him on a Monday night captain? That would be something, wouldn't it? Captain.
That'd be brilliant.
Best captain for the week. Talking of captaincy, Hub predicted points for this week. Haaland top 8.2, Salah 7.1. Even though he's kind of down in minutes, 77 minutes average, we got him for over the last 3 games. He is home to Tottenham, who are incredibly leaky, which I'm sure we'll see again this evening. Foden 6.5, Palmer 6.5, De Bruyne 6.3, Saka 6.3, Isaac 6, Tony 5.8, Havertz and Jackson, Son are all in as well. Don't forget you can get predicted points for a kind of range of weeks, each individual week. Recommended transfer everything at fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. In terms of the poll, Haaland top 54% of the votes, home to Wolves. Isaac 14%, and a few votes for Havertz, De Bruyne, and Saka. What are your thoughts on captaincy, Rich? Bear in mind, you are chasing a touch. Are you tempted to go
touch? My God, I'm chasing a load. I mean, we talked about top 50Ks a couple of weeks ago. I think that's gone now. I'm actually trying to play. My objective, one of my personal objectives is to stay in the Elite 64 mini league. I came 3rd in it last year. I'm fighting relegation this year. So I think I'm 47th, and the from 51 downwards, you go down, you get relegated. So I'm right on the bubble of the relegation spots. So I've got to play sensibly. So if I can stay up in that league and fight for another season, that's just a personal goal of mine. So I can't go too nuts.
You captain Haaland.
I'm on a wild card. I'm captain Haaland. Yeah. To cut to the chase. The only player I'd be tempted by is probably Isak. But remember that game in game week 29 when everybody loaded up on Brentford players, Tony, Wissa, Reguilon, because they were playing Burnley away. Burnley are fighting. They're still fighting. They're in a 3-way fight with Luton and Forest, and 2 of those teams are going down, right? So Burnley, this is a massive game for Burnley, and Newcastle don't travel well. I've just got a feeling that they can win that game in the same way that they walloped Brentford that day. That could be a tough game for Newcastle. So I actually he'd be the only one that would tempt me this week. Havertz, no pens against Bournemouth versus Haaland against Wolves. Nah, come on.
No, I think Haaland's a sensible pick. I do think Isaac will probably get a return. The Wilson thing's just playing slightly on my mind, but Isaac's been in such good form, he's bound to play. I wonder if he gets pens when Wilson's on the pitch as well. I think it's probably fair to say Isaac's the number 1 now, isn't he? He's the towards the end of last season when Wilson was in the team, Isaac was kind of relegated onto the left wing, wasn't he? And Wilson took all the pens. I think Isaac is probably the number 1 now, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Wilson had that massive 48 points versus 4 variant swing, didn't he? In game week 37, I think it was last year, because everyone said, Isak's the X minutes pick, go with Isak. The herd all did that way, and then Wilson played both games, had a penalty in each game, didn't he? And Isak did nothing, and that was just. It could happen again. Will lightning strike in the same game week at the same time? Callum Wilson, there we are. If you want an uber differential, we haven't mentioned him, but it could work. You never know.
I'm surprised Mateta's not in the top 20 scoring players for the week. Bearing in mind United have been so poor. He came off early in the last match, didn't he? He had a bit of a rest, so his minutes would potentially have gone down.
Yeah, I mean, I would again, if you got Punty captain on Mateta, I think United aren't great, are they?
They're awful defensively. It's not they're not great. They're bloody awful. And Palace on the crest of a wave, right? They're flying, absolutely flying.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That would be
just do it, man. Do it.
Yeah, but Rich, the whole problem I've got is, I cannot face Haaland and banging in 2 goals or a hat trick
and sending you out of the top million.
I can't face it. Does it matter? I mean, my rank at the moment is just shocking anyway. So I don't know whether I can just do it to myself. I may I may decide next week on the bench boost when everyone will be taking hits anyway, just to go for those different players, just to go for.
Yeah.
I need to give a bit of a think, but I'm happy to own Mateta. There's no way I'm selling him this week for Isak or anyone else. So
good man.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. Fergie's a punt for the next few game weeks. Gave me 36 to 38. Bit of a boring one this week. Didn't really have much time to give it an awful lot of thought. There was a really good shout for Richarlison. You mentioned Spurs away to Liverpool. I can see, unless Liverpool, unless Klopp gives them an absolute rollicking this week, and they really tighten up and really sharpen up. I think Spurs do all right. I've gone for a bit of a boring one. We touched on him in a bit last week, but with the Werner injury, Brennan Johnson is still on my mind for the last 3 game weeks. So I put him in. The way to Liverpool this week, which is okay, it's not the best fixture on paper, but like we said about game state, game importance, Liverpool are out, out of the running. Spurs are very much in the running still for 4th. It'll be tough. It'll be tough for them. Likely to get 5th, but they're still there. But also over the next 2 weeks after that, they have got Burnley and Sheffield United as well. With Werner injured now, I'm not sure what they're going to play. In terms of a front three for Charles and his back, but just a fan of Brennan Johnson. Think he's he's one of these players he can return. So I quite like him still as a differential personally. What's your thought? What's your thoughts on Johnson, mate? Do you think he over the next few?
I mean, obviously we're probably minutes away, possibly even seconds away from the team league, because it's a 7:30 kickoff.
Oh, is it
tonight,
really?
and I think
7:30?
we're heading towards 6:20. So normally you start to get the lineup. So if anyone on the chat's got the lineups tonight and Richarlison is playing, that's quite relevant to this, because if Richarlison comes in up front for Spurs, then I think they'll move Son to the left, and Johnson may get the spot on the right hand side over Kulusevski, but I'm not sure he'd necessarily start. So if he starts tonight and Richarlison's still on the bench, then I would say your punt was right on.
I've got some news for you. I've got some leak news. Charlison starts, as does Cole Palmer, as does Brennan Johnson, and Maddison isn't in the starting 11.
Wow.
Which is interesting. So, talk about timing. I literally went on and...
Yeah, exactly. We didn't just throw this show together,
Honestly. And Riddlewell in the chat just said, Son, Brennan Johnson, Richarlison, and Kulusevski all start, which is...
No, there we are.
Is interesting.
Good punt, Fergie.
Oh, come on. Talk about timing, flipping it. Let's have a look at your team, Rich, for the coming week. Looking good. Your team looks strong.
Thank you, mate. I think we'll be all right for this week with the roll. I'm hoping so. I think I'm going to start Edison based on current news. I'm not sure we'll get one more presser, won't we, tomorrow from Pep, who, as always, rewards us with everything we want to know. The journalists didn't even bother asking him about Haaland last week, did they? And so we never got the answer. But I think Haaland will be back. I think he'll start. He'll be the captain. And I think we've got it. The way we've got it currently is we've got me starting Petrovic on screen. But I think and obviously this
because of Edison's injury, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. I'll probably start Edison, and if he goes with Ortega, then I've got Petrovic as backup. I'd rather have Edison at home to Wolves than Petrovic at home to West Ham. Obviously, West Ham's a good fixture, so the benching decision over the front 8, which this is a very common front 8, is really hard this week. So in some ways, Bruno Fernandes being a doubt for Monday may end up taking that dilemma away, but you won't know about that when you make the decision on
early
Friday
deadline
evening.
this week. Early deadline.
It is. It's 6:30 tomorrow deadline, I think, and it could be that I have it the way it is. Let's see how Jack. I haven't seen that line. I assume Jackson is starting tonight and not benched or anything. But if he puts in a good performance tonight, then it'll be very difficult to drop Jackson at home to West Ham, who I think are right down the bottom in terms of expected goals conceded at the moment. So at the moment, I think the way you've got it there on the slide with Gordon on the bench in an away game, he possibly just gets benched ahead of Jackson for me. Although I've seen many arguments that suggest Gordon should play and Jackson should be benched, and there's not much between them. Porro, would you play Burn away to Burnley or Porro away to Liverpool? That's quite a tricky one.
Burn all day for me, mate. Sorry. They got it. Yeah, they got it. Like Newcastle kept 2 clean sheets fairly recently as well. You've got it. I always think you've got to look for clean sheets first. That's the bread and butter. And while I expect Burnley probably score, Liverpool will definitely score. So you're just completely reliant on attacking returns of a player who's only returned once in the last 10 or 12 game weeks. So you've got to go for Burn. And Burn, has got some attacking threat as well. So Burn all day for me. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, the team's great. I'm actually, I'm going out tomorrow night, so I won't even be around at the deadline. So yeah, it's good to have a roll week for me, and I'm sure other people will be the same.
Stuff. Cedric in the chat has said, I've just finished doing the survey. Hope it helps. If you are a Fantasy Football Hub member, we have sent out a member survey.
Thank you.
So please do fill it out. It really helps. Thank you so much, Cedric, and hopefully we get more than that. You should get an email in your inbox. So please fill it out. £200 Amazon voucher as a random reward. Anyway, we move on. Your recommended transfer this week, Rich, is brilliant. I love this. I love this transfer. Ben Davies to Emerson Royale. That is fantastic.
As if picking Ben Davies wasn't bad enough. It's now taking me further into that hole and saying, go for Emerson Royale.
Royale could be... I'd pick him in 37. I mean, he's okay for this week, right? He's going to score more points than Ben Davies, but... I think Royale, he could be when I go for next week. We're talking about complete punts.
The graph doesn't lie, does it? It's got Mount Everest on top of the Atacama Desert there.
He's the kind of player, Royale. Like, there's loads on Porro. I haven't got Porro. So what's the point of me going for Porro? I can go for an attacking player on the other side. You never know, mate. That's the kind of pitch next week I'll be bringing in. I think. I think it's wise. I don't think you need to this week, obviously, but
no, I don't. I think I'll be rolling, buddy. Yeah.
My team looks completely different to yours, mate. I've got Vicario in goal away to Liverpool. Not the best, but yep. Salah penalty save would be nice. Gabriel, Virgil. My defense speed. Bloody hell, I got 8. Oh God, I got.
But Fergie, I hope you know this is many people's favourite part of the show when you run.
It's not mine. I've got a pick for my third defender out of 8 Norrie, who is injured and he's away to Man City. Gusto, who's injured, or Senesi, who's away to Arsenal. It's not the best, is it?
It's not the best.
And I've also got to play Virgil, who's home to Tottenham, who is definitely going to concede. So. And then, I was about to say, isn't it time for a Virgil header off a corner? But he's playing my team Tottenham, so I can't win whatever happens with anything. I can't win there. Midfield's looking all right. Foden, Palmer. I've got Saka, who is kind of a differential now amongst engaged managers. Came up trumps me this week, and Son. I've got Garnacho, and at the moment it's telling me to play Haaland and Mateta. I like Mateta this week.
Mateta's good. Your problems are in the defence, and many people's are this week, aren't they? I mean, Senesi, you might as well not bother. I mean, Bournemouth are going to get gubbed, aren't they? But you probably wouldn't take him out because he's actually going to play. So
exactly.
My thoughts are, what are you going to do about Gusto? I mean, Gusto is nowhere near the bench tonight if someone's looking at the lineup. But it's like, if he's not anywhere near the bench, is he going to double? So you get rid of Gusto, you get rid of Virgil, get some money. How much you got in the bank?
I can't get rid of Virgil.
You got 4.5.
I can't get rid of Virgil. He's my second playing player.
Well, that's it. Exactly. Do you want him in a double game week? I mean, you've got. Okay, I've got some questions because this is very relevant. How many have you counted up your single game week players for your bench boost and your flagged or injured players for your bench boost?
I haven't off the top of my head. So in
Okay.
terms of, so I've got
Quite a few
I'll have
of them,
1,
isn't
2,
there?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've only actually got
9
6.
non-doubling players.
Or non or injured.
Right.
I've only actually got
Okay.
6
Okay.
fit doublers at the moment.
Okay. So how many single game week players would you be comfortable bench boosting with?
Oh, I don't like it's game state for me. I just want
Yeah.
to get 15 players out at the moment. Never mind if they double or
Yeah.
not, to be honest.
Okay. So that probably looks like at least a couple of hits between now and game week 37, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? So you're probably looking at, even if you play conservatively, a -4 this week and a -4 next week to bench boost.
It does, yeah, and that's conservatively.
Yeah.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah. So have you got in your mind which 2 moves you might do as a priority?
Well, I need a keeper because Neto looks like now he's lost his place. So potentially a move to someone like Dubravka, if I go for him, could work this week because otherwise I have to play Vicario away to Liverpool. I mean that's a pointless exercise. So I can play Dubravka away to Burnley, as an example. So that could be like a priority move. And then the other one is obviously the others are in defence, and and judged by what you said, Vardiol and Burn look probably the best sort of options there. So I could do, and they're home to Wolves, which is quite decent. So I could do, but again, this is my thing. Do I want to just bring in a really popular player again? It's kind of that thing of what's the point? But -4 this week potentially for Guardiol.
Well, Guardiol's still a bit of a differential, despite the fact that Twitter will make it seem like everybody owns him. They don't. He's still, and most people have blocked on going for him because they've got Ederson and 2 other City attackers. So Guardiol still makes sense for you, I think, to do. And he's not much money. You've got loads of money in the bank, according to this slide, anyway. It's so 8 Nori to Guardiol's getting an extra game, getting you home to Wolves, allows you to bench Senesi, and he's only a -4.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a no-brainer.
I think so.
And then maybe take Gusto out at the same time, or take him out for someone else, depending on the prognosis after tonight's
I'll do
game.
that next week with Gusto because I'm still not sure.
He might recover, as you say.
Exactly.
If he recovers and he's available and he's got a double game week, you're just going, well, why did I make that move? So yeah, I think you could a hit this week massively helps the team,
I think so.
And sends you into next week with 8 doublers and another couple of transfers to make potentially.
So, and I like I say, next week I'm thoroughly expected because we don't know the outputs of what's happening this week, do we? In terms of injuries yet, either, do we? So maybe
it's a constant. I've never known a season like it. This isn't just me moaning about my team. Every manager on this pod who's listening, watching, has got injured players, but it just seems to be constant. Every week you get another, on average, a couple of extra injuries to deal with. So you never seem to be able to bring in the players that you were targeting bringing in. I mean, I couldn't bring in a second Arsenal defender till the wildcard because I've always been fixing injuries all season, and it's just nuts, and it just continues to happen. So to get through tonight's game, which could be carnage, these teams really like each other, don't they? And then
there was 2 red cards and 2 injuries last time. Four players.
And they're in about 90% of teams, all these players tonight. So if we get through tonight's game, then they each get another game at the weekend. The chances of having no more flags are nil. They're going to be at least another 3 or 4 flags coming through before the double. So fix those flags, people.
My recommended transfer this week: Gusto to Gvardiol. It does say Mateta to Isaac, which again, it's understandable because Isaac is likely to outscore Mateta. Though I do think Mateta this week is a fairly good option, so I'm probably not going to do that.
Yeah, punt it in your position. Punt it definitely.
Jason Stilling in the chat says, "Team looking as strong as ever, Fergie. Use your 3rd wild card." And we did have a couple of questions about Gilchrist being a decent option for Chelsea, but You can't pick a Chelsea
I don't know.
defender.
I don't think I don't really want any more Chelsea players. The ones I've got that are starting every week are enough of a liability. A load of fringe player now. I mean, we really have been so up and down. I mean, 2 weeks ago beat Everton 6-0, and Everton won 3 on the bounce since, haven't they? So you really don't know what you're going to get. I think tonight's game for the neutral will be very entertaining.
It'll be a good watch.
I cannot see it being anything other than a good game to watch. But in terms of fantasy returns, Palmer looks good, but apart from that, I'm not expecting too many.
Well, that is it from us for this week. Thank you so much to everyone who joined in the chat. Those who watch it back and those listening on the podcast version, your support is very much appreciated. Rich, thank you so much as usual. Where can people get hold of you?
I'm on at Rich Clarke FPL on Twitter, or X as it's now called.
And I'm on at FFH_Fergi. Make sure you drop us both a follow, and at FFH_Green Arrow as well. This podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watch, please press the like button. It would be much, much appreciated. It really, really does help. Remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. As I mentioned earlier, we've sent out a member survey to every Fantasy Football Hub member. We would really appreciate it if you could just take a minute or two to reply. It does help us massively in terms of, helping us understand, our members, what they want, what they need, what they want improving, etc. So please do, if you have got a few minutes, it would help us tremendously. We're back next week to look ahead to the big double game week 37, which will be the penultimate episode of the season. In the meantime, we hope you have a great game week 35, and may all your arrows be green. Good night, all.